Welcome to Career Mobility with James Mcilvena. It's August 2022 already. Can't believe we're already here. How are you doing, James?
I am doing well, but same as you. Can't believe it is the second half of the year, although I have been able to get a holiday in during the recent school holidays. So that is always nice. I think we've mentioned in past versions that the need to look after yourself and focus on well-being. It's amazing what even a short 6-day break can do for you.
Absolutely. It's really important to do that and get out there. For myself, I've been absolutely getting out and enjoying some of the great Melbourne weather we've been having. Yeah, you just got to enjoy it while it's there and make the most of it. So James, what have you been up to? What's been happening? Obviously we talked about the new financial year last month. What's been happening in July and into August?
Yeah, look, where do I start? July and August is always, for those that run financial years, it's always, a big planning component. But the more interesting things have been keeping the business ticking along, but the more interesting things was an event I went to recently. So we, for quite a while, because there's a close relationship between people understanding what skills they have and LHH's business, which is actually providing the coaching and the frameworks and the tools in order to make the most of that, make the most of their talents or learn new talents. We partnered for a while with a business called Rejig. And so they held I don't think it would be a launch dinner so much because they've been out in market for quite a while, but I think it was a dinner for the people who've been with them on the journey and been supporters of them as they've come to market. And so that was fascinating because it is, I know, about a topic you and I both love, which is people unlocking their potential. Yeah,
absolutely. Realizing and fulfilling potential is something that absolutely fills my boots. So I'd love to hear more about what was covered at the event, because I know one of the things that they sort of talked about was that idea of what is it you wanted to be when you were a child, like when you were a kid, what was that sort of vocation that you thought you were going to follow, and has that been what you've done? How did that work out? So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so one of the things they did, it was one of my favorite bits of the event, was they had like a big board up on stage, and you had sort of two strings. There was like a fluoro yellow and a fluoro orange string, and you took the fluoro yellow string first, which was it represented what did you want to do and be when you're a child. And I won't remember every point along the journey, but you then had to take that string and look at your journey around, did you actually ever fulfill that, right? So was it just a dream as a child? And they asked you to consider things like, what was it that inspired you to want to do this?
I like that.
In the first place. So it was one of the first ones, which was what inspired you. Then there's another one, which is, where did you learn the skills for it? Then the next one was, does that job excite you? And then finally, like, what is success, or what does success look like? And so for me, like as a kid, the one thing I wanted to do, although amount of talent got in the way in this instance, was I wanted to be an AFL footballer. And so even doing something like that, which to me now is very unrealistic at any level, but just thinking about putting yourself back into that, as a kid, what inspired you to want to do it? Where did you learn the skills, right? You were supported by your parents, and you went from Auskick through to playing junior footy through to, and so thinking about that journey was actually really helpful to get you in the mindset. And then it asked you about the job you're doing today. And so it was a really interesting journey to think about, did you actually end up? So when you're thinking about, what inspired you, and it's the job, and it was all about the not necessarily being a linear pathway. So it was, the second half was the job you're doing today, but also how your professional career has unfolded. So it took you back to what inspired you, or what was your pathway at the start, and then where did you learn your skills? So if you did, school or TAFE or online courses or university, like, where did you learn your skills? And then, does the job excite you that you're doing today? And then, what does success look like? And success was almost the future focused bit.
Yeah.
The core at the end of it was saying, if you're not making these deliberate considerations around your career pathway and the talents you have, then you're probably not maximizing your full potential. And the idea of staying sort of stagnant or feeling like you're stuck somewhere is something that should be always challenged, continually challenged, no matter how comfortable you are in a role. For the people who are in our programs and they're a state of flux or a state of transition, I mean, they are always assessing, where are my skills at? What's new? What do I need to learn? Where am I going next? But these same questions are just as pertinent around, what have I done? How did it get to where I am? What does success look like for me? How do I need to learn what I need to learn for where I'm going next? So I really enjoyed that component of it. And also, quite frankly, TJ, because this whole idea of everyone has skills and talents that they might not have either acknowledged or incorporated into either professional or personal life, or have they even considered the things that they would like to do or learn to do, but haven't yet taken action on.
Yeah, look, I think, it sounds like an amazing event and a really exciting journey to take. I think that's the thing about career mobility now in 2022, particularly post-COVID. Transition gives you the opportunity to kind of stop for a while, work with professionals if you're involved in an LHH program, and really think critically and in depth about what's important to you and what you care about. Like you say, what lights you up, what excites you, what inspires you, all those things. What's kind of interesting and what we're seeing, I think, as well, is that potential for companies to help people along that journey, and certainly to start looking at that as part of the development journey. But again, for individuals to own that when they're actually going through that, when they're in any role, like, are you actually doing things that stretch you and get you out of your comfort zone? And are you learning new things? And, do you actually really love what you do? And if you don't, then what are you doing about that? How could you move and sort of, transition into something else that might be better and actually add more value to you, but also to the organization?
Yeah, and look, the critical component in all of that, and everything you've said is important, by the way, but the critical component of that is the ability, and that's why I referenced the exercise, it's the ability to sort of stop and think. In anything. They talk about it when it comes to mindfulness. They talk about when it comes to being more effective and more productive in your job. Allowing yourself the time and space to think about your objective before you do all of those things is just so critically important. And even more so, because we talked about last time, in a market where there's talent shortage and the labor market's really hot, there can be the easy path or the fast path when the opportunity just sits there and I'm not suggesting people delay decision making or procrastinate. That's two different things. Structured thinking about a clear assessment of what motivates you, what you're passionate about, what you've learned from how you got to the point where you're sitting today. That reflection component, and reflection which then results in a clear direction for where you want to head in the future. That's the really important bit. Then you can go and map out your plan. Then you can figure out the various components you need to do, or the skills you need to collect, or the things you need to learn, or the input that's required from you to network, or be more active to listening to things, or be more up to date with industry trends, like whatever it is. It starts with that clear direction and the outcome you're after.
It's interesting, James, I'm thinking, so you wanted to be an AFL player. So what in your role now relates to that? And what did you learn about your journey? Like, what did you see for yourself from having looked at that and kind of, acknowledging that that's where you started, but, where are you now? Because I know you're a very active person anyway, so I can understand that you have that part of you and you definitely look to compete and things like that. So I can see that part, but how is that showing up for you in your career, and what did you see from the journey?
So it was interesting because it encouraged you to do sort of reflection from more than just that. So I went from sort of wanting to be an AFL player to then it evolved to I enjoyed playing golf as well as AFL. So then I started thinking down the pathway of, well, you know, this is how I am. Greg Norman was number one in the world back then. So Greg Norman's making a lot of money, right? Maybe I won't be a professional golfer, but I like people and I like psychology. And so I'll study a psych degree and maybe I could be a sports psychologist. And then that led me in off the base of a psych degree to doing an HR postgrad. And then that led me to sort of where I am today. So actually the journey is so not linear from wanting to be an AFL footballer to then probably at some point, I think I was about 16, 17 when I actually realized that, you know, my ambition exceeded my talent to be a professional sports person. And I probably hadn't been dedicated enough from a young enough age to go into professional sports. But you can still combine that component of your passion into what you're doing. And still today, having done a psych degree, getting to and being in the business where you actually help people unlock their talent. I mean, how different is that really from, I suppose, my second, so after the AFL football, my second thing, which was be a sports psychologist to help people unlock their talent, not let their head get in the way of themselves. I think it was after I watched him choke at a British Open, I'm like, someone needs to help that guy.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's so true. It's I mean, definitely golf is all about that. It's a mind game. It's you've got to be focused. It's just really fascinating, James. So I mean, you know, in terms of I guess, you know, what else did you take away from that event? Were there other things that came up in the room that you were kind of inspired by? And was that a virtual event, or did you go on site actually there in Sydney?
No, it was an in-person event that they held at a restaurant here in Sydney. And so I think the other thing that they challenged people in the room to do was to sort of stand up and provide some elements of advice they'd give their younger self. And so and you know, and didn't have to be career specific, but most of them were. But again, it links back to that whole idea of reflection and understanding your journey and understanding that it's non-linear. And it links back to this whole concept of unleashing your potential. And so I suppose for everyone who, you know, congratulations if you've invested the time to listen to this in the first place, because you're already interested in finding out more about talent mobility. But then like that reflection component of maybe some of the things I've discussed today, which was just simple exercises around what advice would you give your younger self, then follow that through to what advice you give yourself now to maybe think about your career journey and passion. So what were you passionate about as a kid through to what are you doing today? And even just how did that unfold? And then some of the components I mentioned before are great questions to ask yourself. You know, where did you learn the skills you've got? Where can you learn the skills you want? Does this type of thing, you know, inspire passion in you? And do you have an outcome or a focus in mind? Getting back to the whole sports analogy, you know, you often see people visualizing what it is they want to do. You know, see them visualize, right? They'll see and go, they'll like, I visualize what it's going to do, then I go and execute it. Not that different for a career, right? If you've got a target in mind, but if you're out there saying, oh, look, I just hope I don't end up in the lake, it's probably a reasonable chance you end up in the lake. So if you understand what success looks like, you can visualize it, you can then have a reasonable chance of executing on it.
Brilliant. Well, I think that is a wrap. I think that's a perfect way to that's a way to finish this session.
Exactly. And I've been given a leave pass for the first time in a long time to play golf this weekend, DJ. So sorry for all the golf analogies in this one, but I'm just a little excited about getting some time on the golf course.
I've actually seen, I was funny checking the app out, and I know you've got some great weather coming as well. So enjoy that, because you'll actually be able to get out there and literally enjoy some great Sydney weather. And we look forward to hearing how you go.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I'll share next time if it went well. I'll quickly change subject if it didn't.
Use the visualization. That was a great segue.
Thanks so much, TJ.
Okay, cheers, James.